Alrighty, guys. Welcome to Optimizing Forward, guys. I'm going to make a live stream here for you guys today. Haven't made a live stream in about 5 days. My pomodoro's went off. So yeah, guys, let's go ahead and go over some stuff today. I have a pretty bad headache. Actually, a horrible headache. But so kind of today, guys, what we're going to go over is what we'll call emotional IQ, right? So let's go ahead and go over what that looks like. This might be a bit of a shorter video today, but obviously I think this is probably one of the most important skills you're ever going to need to learn, honestly, without a doubt. I think this is probably more important than even making money, honestly, I would say. Okay, so clean up this area. I'll give you a chance. Okay, so let's pull up this whiteboard, and then we will begin going over a lot of these different ideas. And the first thing I want to go over, right? I'm going to make a contrast between these two dichotomies. The first dichotomy is the dichotomy of logic, and then the dichotomy of emotion, right? So as a guy, this is going to be, I don't want to make it sound cliche, right? But like emotion versus logic is something I don't think is very well understood. Okay, like maybe intellectually you understand it, but you probably won't really see these two things combined until you're in a relationship. And frankly, having to applicate both of these things at the same time is one of the hardest things, in my personal opinion, one of the hardest things you will ever have to do. It is hard as hell. Okay. So the first thing we should understand is, what are emotions? Like, in simple term, what is an emotion, right? It's basically you feel things throughout the day that give you meaning in your human experience. Sometimes you feel depressed, sometimes you feel sad, sometimes you feel angry, right? You feel all these different emotions, obviously, and those emotions will affect you. Simplest example is like a couple days ago, I was supposed to train, or today I didn't train, right? For reasons I won't get into, but I was like, today I'm not going to train for very specific reasons. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all these issues that are unaddressed because of these emotional components, right? So emotions basically allow humans to experience the world in simplest terms, right? We have emotions, we feel these emotions, and then there is what I call logic or analyticism. I analyze the world to try to solve a problem, to make sense of the world, and these two are basically connected at the hip. For women, it's emotions first and then logic. Men, it's primarily logic first, then emotions. Okay, so I more so the personalities may differ, but the application is roughly different. So really, like in simplest terms, right? Who are the most successful people in life? And those are simply the people that have integrated the emotions with their logic and can, I would say, go back and forth, right? They can applicate both at the same time. I can use my logic, but yeah, I can be emotional. I can empathize with others, but yeah, I can not give a fuck, right? You have to have the ability to not give a fuck, right? You care too much, then people can take advantage of that. So it's actually very difficult, and most of these people that are, as I would say, incredibly successful are people that are either born with this ability. Honestly, I don't think everyone is born with the ability. I really don't. Like, you may have individuals that primarily use a logical modality with emotions that they suppress, or tend to be more emotional with logic that they sometimes use. You don't really, I haven't met too many people that really do both at the same time. At least I have never seen it, not on a regular basis anyways. Okay. So then the next thing that comes to mind is like, the real question is, why is it, at least for me, why is it so fucking hard, right? Like, in theory, this shit should be fairly simple. Someone does something you don't like, you get upset and you let it go, right? But for whatever reason, these things they tend to be very, what I would say, sticky. They stick. They don't go away, right? And what's really going on here? Well, the thing is that like you can't just always just get rid of your emotions. You can't just like toss it away. Like I would like to think that I can just ignore everything that I feel, right? Ideally, you would just suppress it and move on. And that's why from a young age, most guys are taught stop crying, move on, push forward, right? You can do that for a while, but it will build up. Okay. And the simplest thing you do is whatever emotion you do, you probably just talk it out and you will feel better. But you have to talk it out, right? You keep it inwards, you keep it to yourself, you distance yourself. This will only make it worse. 99% of the time, it will make it worse. You will feel sad, you will feel grief. And then there's this other thing I call the thought loop, okay? A thought loop. What is a thought loop, right? It is something that is, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people struggle with this. Even I struggle with this sometimes. And it is something that it is a deficit in ourself, if you will. Okay, so let's really think about what's really, like a lot of these things, when you get in a relationship, right? Like it will show you your flaws, right? A relationship will always show you what your flaws are, where your shortcomings are, and your strengths. But also at the same time, right? If you're a more analytical individual, such as myself, then you're going to use logic first, right? That's our primary, and then the emotional component secondary. So naturally, you're simply just not going to be as good at understanding what you feel. You may feel things, but you won't understand. Sometimes I'll be like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like why am I upset? Or why you're asking a logical question, something you don't understand, right? And this is an imbalance. In an ideal world, your parents should teach you these things. You don't want to learn these things in your 20s. Trust me, it's terrible. It's horrible. It's an absolutely unfulfilling, miserable experience having to learn this the hard way. Okay, it is. I can't stress enough how miserable it is. You can learn it when you're 5, or you can learn it when you're 35, getting your heart destroyed by a girl you love. Right? She will like take your heart and rip it to pieces and throw it in the dumpster, and then you're just gonna be like bawling your eyes out. Right? So it would behoove you to understand what the hell is going on. Obviously, an analytical individual will ask questions, right? We'll ask what is happening in the world, and then, most analytical things simply go from a cycle. The question, then we go to possibilities. And once we have the possibilities, we have our answer. And then probably in an analytical individual, you have your emotional resolution. And at that point, if you're not in your emotional equilibrium, I would call it. So this is basically a constant content state. You're not too happy, you're not too sad, you're roughly where you need to be within this line. And then when you get upset, you go way above this line. And when you get sad, you go way above that, up and down. And then you're going to have performance drop, right? I think today I probably lost like 300 ELO or something like that. So I was like 2,035. Now I'm like 1,725, right? So obviously there's a connection between these things. So, not everybody is going to follow these components, right? But the thing is that with the emotional integration factor, the emotional integration factor is simply my ability to have the logic with the emotion and for them to work together, right? My logic should inform my emotions, and my emotions should inform my logic. And this should equal a good life, right? Unfortunately, Most people do not or cannot do that. When you're in a what I would call a thought loop, right? A thought loop is basically where you're perpetually trying to solve a problem with a question, and then there's another question, and then there's another question, and we're just asking questions, and this costs energy, and it will also change your emotional state to becoming upset chronically because there's no answer, right? You're only going to get more and more upset if you can't get an answer. I'm just kind of outlining what emotional IQ is. So pretty much what I would call as a robust emotional IQ, if you will, is the ability to do the following. You should have the ability to, as I would say, be, I guess, less intense, right? So if you're too intense, then obviously your emotions are fucking just simply too much for people to process. So, guys, there's just things we have to remember, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being intense, and there's nothing wrong with feeling our emotions, but like, you don't want to change yourself for some moron, right? You don't like that moron isn't contributing anything. They don't matter. But like, there should be periods where you have to be intense, right, guys? Like, if you're intensely training, you need to be intensely fucking angry, right? It's not a moderate commitment. But at the same time, if you are in the other component, and that other component is basically like, just where you are in a social situation, then unfortunately that requires more nuance, right? Social interactions, personally, from my understanding, require a huge amount of nuance. You have to have the ability to nuance your way through human interactions at a huge level constantly all day long to be able to really work with people at a high level. Okay. You might think you work with people at a high level, but you probably don't. Okay. Working with people at a high level, I would consider as a person that can orchestrate a group, get a ton of people to do what they say, do conflict resolution, be able to fucking not get upset over things easily, being able to transition out of your emotions, being able to be stuck when necessary. And so, like, doing all this different shit is really fucking hard. And I mean really, really, really hard. Um, because our emotion can become our worldview. And that emotion becomes your worldview, you just do stupid shit. I've had this happen to me numerous times where the emotion I feel is becoming my worldview and it's distorting reality. Perceive reality 100% accurately. Reality is not perceived accurately. You can get informed better about your reality, but that's about it. Otherwise, you're delusional. We all forever will remain perpetually delusional to the real reality. We will never be truly informed about reality. And then, that individual who is emotionally intelligent or emotionally aware also has the ability to stop what I call thought loops. You have the ability to shut it off. You tell your brain, no, I'm not doing this. I will not do this. I'm stopping, right? You have to have the ability to say, stop. I'm not engaging, right? And that, my friends, is the crux of the situation because, like, if you're in a relationship, right, actually, it's a very difficult thing because one, you have to set boundaries with that person. Two, she or he will challenge you. You guys will at some point, no matter how well you guys work together, will probably argue. And then your different worldviews are going to clash with one another. Okay. When it clashes, there's a reverberation effect that occurs. And then you will see flaws in each other's worldviews. And then you have to either learn to work with it or your relationship won't last. Okay. Um, as the guy, right, you have to, I don't say be stable, but you do have to be stable to some degree. Or if not, then your relationship simply isn't going to last. Um, like it's just not going to last. It's not going to be able to It's not going to be what the ideal relationship you want it to be. Okay. Um, Now, at this current time, right, I've kind of identified or defined an emotionally intelligent individual. The question is, what are the skills or what are the things that can impair emotional intelligent individuals? I would say, no, I'm gonna list them off. Emotional trauma. Okay. Unresolved emotional trauma or grief that you carry. Okay. I think a lot of us, more than we realize, have a great deal of grief that we suppress. Okay. Unfortunately, in real life doesn't give a fuck. Real life doesn't care if you have emotional trauma. If you're in war, for example, you just don't care. If you're homeless, if you're in prison, you don't really get a break to process what's happened to you. If you're a rape victim, you might suppress what was done to you because it's too painful. Okay. And then one day you're gonna have these wave of emotion that you suppressed hit you with at full force. And then you'll start crying your eyes out. You'll be like, why am I crying? Nothing happened, right? At least you don't think nothing happened. So let me repeat this. You cannot actually suppress your emotions. It doesn't work. Okay. Emotional suppression doesn't fucking work. Not long term, it doesn't. It doesn't fucking work. It will fail eventually. Okay. Um, so just kind of emotional trauma. I'm gonna have emotional trauma probably. Underachievement is going to be another component. Stress, huge amounts of stress on the nervous system can amplify how you feel your emotions. Emotion amplification. Feel our emotions because it's not always useful. So the simplest thing, if you're a parent right now or whatever it is if you do, it is easier. It is a billion times easier. It's a million trillion times easier if you teach your kids from like 4 years old how to deal with their emotions. Teach them at a young fucking age so their brain will wire itself in such a way to deregulate their own stupidity. Your brain will do stupid shit. The brain always does dumb stuff. It's really stupid. It does a lot of stupid shit and it tries to justify it to itself. Brain really does a lot of dumb stuff. Okay. So unfortunately, if you're like in your 20s and 30s, I don't say you're kind of screwed, but you're kind of screwed a little bit because like your brain is already wired, right? You can still change, you can still do it, but as usual, it tends to be 10 times harder. Okay. It's like chess grandmaster. You can do it, but it's like really fucking hard, right? It's way harder. Like there's like a kid that can just like gain my rating in like a year, whereas I've been doing it for 5 years and I still suck. Okay. It's the same thing with like a language. You can learn a language when you're older, but it's way harder. You can get shredded a lot easier in your teenagers than in your early 30s. Because why? Because you have testosterone. So remember that when you start anything, always start as soon as possible, whenever possible. That will always win. The early bird always gets the worm. The person that always takes the initiative is always better than the person that is delayed. Okay. If you are in my situation where you're like in your mid to late 20s, unfortunately, the process is going to be miserable. It's just going to be a miserable fucking process. You're going to be fucking taken advantage of. People are going to abuse your ability to be emotionally reactive. They're going to use it towards their advantage. You're probably going to keep making the same mistakes for years and years. And then only be like, yes, I finally realized I'm a dummy when you're in that relationship, but then you're eating the consequences of your own lack of self-awareness. So just think about these things, guys. I don't actually have a solution at this current time as to how you get there in your 20s. I don't know what the answer is. I actually don't have no idea. I don't know if it's like meditation or if it's like you just have to reflect about it or maybe it's just like you just have to let all the grief out. I really don't know. But it's not really clear. But at a minimum, if we're at least aware of it, it's better than having no awareness at all. That's all I have for you guys for optimizing for. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit the bell for notification. Thank you. And then I will be seeing you guys.